Okay, so I think I finally got the audio issue worked out. Yay. It's about damn time. So during my hiatus, I went and I introduced a new piece of gear into my audio chain, which is the DBX, and it kind of fucked a lot of things up. I started noticing that the audio hiss was getting really bad with my audio, so I was applying noise reduction, which was causing the ducking and kind of fucking everything up. So I think at this point I have things figured out and it shouldn't be an issue anymore. Hopefully. Because good quality entertainment is sometimes really hard to come by these days, I know we tend to focus a lot on the negative. So I've decided to go and do something a little different and talk about something I actually love, which is horror movies. And none of that modern Blumhouse bullshit. So fuck that garbage. I can easily do a top 30 or 50 horror movies that I really, really like, but I don't have all night, so I'm just gonna do a top 15. Welcome back, Pixel Nation Comics Division here, now with better audio, hopefully. How the hell are you? And tonight we're gonna be talking about Comics Division's top 15 movies to see during the Halloween season. Yes, I know I'm kind of late on this one. I really do suck at planning ahead. Initially, I was going to talk about the Rise of Skywalker trailer, but Halloween's in a couple of days. Like I said, I suck at planning ahead. Now, this isn't going to be like the best of the best. These are just kind of my go-to horror movies. There's lots of horror movies that I really enjoy that didn't make the cut, so don't get pissy if your favorite movie isn't here, like Candyman, Nightbreed, or Seven. And as I go through this list, I'm pretty sure you're gonna pick up on a pattern. I really like ghost and psychological horror. Slasher films aren't my favorite, and I really hate torture porn. Now, to me, there's three things that factor into a great horror movie. The first one is fear. Fear is kind of your generic jump scares. In modern horror movies, they tend to get overused quite a bit and become quite predictable, and they lose their effect. Then there's terror. Terror is working against the social norms. This is what you see in a lot of your torture porn flicks. And then there's horror, which is absence of hope, which is honestly probably one of the more key elements of horror that is underutilized, or simply just not implemented properly. And just like the protagonist, when you walk out of a horror movie, you should be forever changed by it. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tell you the year and title of a movie with the IMDb synopsis, so I don't actually spoil it in case you haven't seen it. And then I'm gonna tell you what I love about it. So, let's get started. Kicking us off at number 15 is 2001's The Others. It's written and directed by Alejandro Amenabar, God, I hope I said that right, and it's starring Nicole Kidman, Christopher Eccleston, and Fiona Flanagan. A woman who lives in her darkened old family house with her two photosensitive children become convinced that the home is haunted. This movie does a great job of building a very haunting and creepy world. At times it can be a little confusing, but it ultimately all makes sense in the end. I'm a pretty big fan of the 90s role-playing game Wraith the Oblivion. In a lot of ways, this movie feels like it's ripped from that world. Now, The Others isn't all that scary, but it's just a really interesting and bizarre world. So if you're a fan of ghost stories, this is definitely worth checking out. Now, this next one's probably going to be a bit controversial. 1991's House on Haunted Hill. Directed by William Malone, the story is by Rob White, and the screenplay is by Dick Debe. It stars Gregory Rush, Famke Jensen, and Taye Diggs. An amusement park mogul offers a group of diverse people $1 million to spend the night in a haunted house with a horrifying past. Yes, I know, blasphemy. This is the remake of the 1959 Vince Price movie. Actually, I really enjoy both, but the reason why I picked this one is because of the special effects, and yes, it's another ghost movie. It's actually pretty well acted. Gregory Rush does a fantastic job of impersonating Vincent Price. The ghost special effects are really well done, and there's some awesome disturbing scenes. One of the guests disappears, and later on they find her vivisected with her organs nice and neatly laid out in a cabinet without any blood. It's very clinical, and it's just amazingly well done. It totally nails that what the fuck moment. Lucky number 13 is 1981's The Howling. It's directed by Joe Dante and is based off the novel by Gary Brandner. After a bizarre, near-deadly encounter with a serial killer, a TV newswoman is sent to a remote mountain resort whose residents may not be what they seem. Cough cough, werewolves. So, why did I pick this movie? Yeah, sure, I could have picked American Werewolf in London, but this movie's more campy and self-aware. And being it that it's the early 80s, the special effects are pretty decent. Coming in at number 12 is 2001's Session 9. It's directed by Brad Anderson, who is also one of the writers, along with Stephen Jevedon. It stars David Caruso, Stephen Jevedon, and Paul Guilfoyle. Tensions rise with an asbestos cleanup crew as they work in an abandoned mental hospital with a horrific past that seems to be coming back. This is probably one of David Caruso's better movies. The set pieces in this movie is amazing. The old dilapidated hospital is just creepy as fuck, and the twist ending is really good. They do a really good job of setting things up along the way, and if you're really paying attention, you can figure it out. Sometimes setting the mood of isolation is pretty key in a horror movie, and this movie does a great job of establishing that. And this is what helps build that tension and creepiness throughout the film. Number 11 is 1999's Stir of Echoes, and it's not really a mistake that I put this right next to Session 9. David Cope is the director as well as the writer of the screenplay, and it's based off of the novel by Richard Matheson. It stars Kevin Bacon, Zachary David Cope, and Catherine Erb. After being hypnotized by his sister-in-law, a man begins seeing haunting visions of a girl's ghost, and a mystery begins to unfold around him. This is probably one of my favorite movies to come out of the late 90s. And yes, it's another ghost story. And just like Session 9, this movie also has themes of isolation. Where Session 9 deals with isolation in the form of being alone by yourself in a creepy environment, and Stir of Echoes accomplishes this through social isolation. Because Tom was hypnotized, you're not really sure if he's truly seeing ghosts, or if he's losing his grip on reality. And because people don't believe him, it slowly isolates him and it looks like he's going crazy. And Kevin Bacon's acting in this movie is just really spot on. Number 10, 1985's Fright Night. There's only one Fright Night, and it's from 1985. Yes, I'm well aware of the Fright Night impersonator starring David Tennant. As much as David Tennant is amazing in everything, it's still not Fright Night. I want to make sure that we establish this before going any further. It's written and directed by Tom Holland. No, not that Tom Holland, that Tom Holland. It stars Chris Sarandon, William Ragsdale, and Amanda Beers. And if you don't remember who Amanda Beers is, she was the annoying neighbor from Married with Children. A teenager discovers that the newcomer in his neighborhood is a vampire, so he turns to an actor in a television horror show for help dealing with the undead. Fright Night is kind of the rear window of its time. It's a mix of classical horror, 80s horror, and 80s camp. And what's so great about it is it does a wonderful job of mixing all three. There's times where the movie can be a bit silly, and then it will suddenly turn deadly serious, and it doesn't feel out of place. Speaking of vampire movies, coming in at number 9 is 1987's The Lost Boys. Directed by Joel Schumacher, written by Janice Fisher, James Jeremis, and Jeffrey Baum. It stars Jason Patric, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, and Diane Weiss. After moving to a new town, two brothers discover that the area is a haven for vampires. Maybe with the exception of Shadow of the Vampire, this is probably one of the best vampire movies that came out in modern times. And why is Shadow of the Vampire not on here? Because I forgot about it when I was making my list. Joel Schumacher has done a lot of movies, and this is probably my favorite. Honestly, it's not that hard. He's also put out a lot of trash. Batman and Robin. Anyway, The Lost Boys has everything I really want out of a vampire movie. And I've yet to see a vampire movie duplicate its success, other than Shadows of the Vampire, but that's for completely different reasons. Strolling in at number 8 is 1996's The Frighters. Yes, I get it, it's another ghost movie. Deal with it. Directed by Peter Jackson, written by Fran Walsh as well as Peter Jackson. Starring Michael J. Fox, Pri Shakening, Trini Alvarado, and Peter Dobson. After a tragic car accident that kills his wife, a man discovers he can communicate with the dead to con people. However, when a demonic spirit appears, he may be the only one who can help stop it from killing the living and the dead. And that's honestly a really good summation of the movie. Now, I saw The Frighters at a drive-in theater with a couple of my friends. These two in particular I've known since college, and they're actually members of my current gaming group. Now, I've talked about Wraith the Oblivion before, and that's all we did after seeing this movie, just talking about the similarities between the game and some of the events that happened in the movie, and we joked about how this movie was made for gamers. But all in all, it's just a really fantastic movie about ghosts. Coming in at number 7 is 2007's The Mist. It's based off of Stephen King's novel with the same name and is written and directed by Frank Darabont. It stars Thomas Jane, Marcia Gay Harden, and Laurie Holden. A freak storm unleashes a species of bloodthirsty creatures on a small town, where a small band of civilians hold up in a supermarket and fight for their lives. Now, this movie didn't exactly settle with audiences very well, and the main reason why is because of the ending. And in my opinion, that ending is just fucking fantastic. This movie is horror at its finest. Whenever I talk about the protagonist in a horror movie surviving but forever changed, this is a really good example of that. The ending is just so heartbreaking and depressing, and it truly captures the essence of absence of hope. And if you have small children, it'll make you want to hug them tight. And finally, we close off the first 10 films with 1931's Frankenstein. Sometimes you just can't beat the classics. It's directed by James Whale and is written by John L. Balderston. And obviously, it's adapted from the works of Mary Shelley. It stars Colin Clive, Mae Clark, and Boris Karloff. An obsessed scientist assembles a living being from the parts of exhumed corpses. So why is this movie at number 6? Because Boris motherfucking Karloff. Really, that's it. I love Boris Karloff. And Frankenstein's one of my favorite monsters. Coming in at number 5 is 1984's The Terminator. Directed by James Cameron, written by James Cameron as well as Gail Ann Hurd. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lena Hamilton, and Michael Biehn. A seemingly indestructible robot is sent from 2029 to 1984 to assassinate a young waitress, whose unborn son will lead humanity in the war against the sentient machines, while a human soldier from the same war is sent to protect her at all costs. Now, I know plenty of people will say that this movie is actually sci-fi action, but in my opinion, it's really sci-fi horror. Now, this movie isn't just one of my top 5 horror movies, it's also one of my top 5 movies from the 80s. I love the first 2 Terminator movies. The rest of them don't really hold up, and of course we keep getting terrible remakes and redos and Dark Fate. Yeah, it's pretty sad. But this movie is simply phenomenal. The special effects don't exactly hold up in certain areas, but you know what? I don't care because this movie is just simply amazing. Number 4, 1990's Jacob's Ladder. Directed by Adrian Lyne and written by Bruce Joel Robin. It stars Tim Robbins, Elizabeth Pena, and Danny Aiello. Mourning his dead child, a haunted Vietnam veteran attempts to uncover his past while suffering from a severe case of disassociation. To do so, he must decipher reality and life from his own dreams, delusions, and perceptions of death. This movie is such an amazing mindfuck. I swear, I must have watched it like 2 or 3 times to finally really figure out what the hell was going on. When you get to the end of the movie, you're kind of like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, wait. I get it now. And if you've ever read the book Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Number 3, 1979's Alien. Directed by Ridley Scott and written by Dan O'Bannon. It stars Sigourney Weaver, Tom Skerritt, and John Hurt. After a space merchant vessel perceives an unknown transmission as a distress call, its landing on the source moon finds one of its crew attacked by a mysterious life form, and they soon realize that its life cycle has merely begun. Now, up this point, most science fiction has been shown as bright and clean, and this is the first time where we see a dark, drab, and dirty future. In a lot of ways, it's very blue collar. For the most part, the crew of the Sulaco are nothing more than truck drivers in space. Growing up, I heard tales of how horrific and terrifying this movie was, and it scared the shit out of adults, and my parents wouldn't let me near it. Now, ironically enough, I actually owned the toy of the alien as a kid. I finally saw it at the age of 13, and it was amazing. Despite being created in the late 70s, everything about this movie still holds up. And to this day, the chestburster scene still gives me chills. Number 2, 1932's The Mummy. Yes, another Boris Karloff film. The Mummy is directed by Karl Freund, and it's written by John L. Balderston, Nina Wilcox Putman, and Richard Schreier. It stars Boris Karloff, Zita Johann, and David Manners. A resurrected Egyptian mummy stalks a beautiful woman he believes to be the reincarnation of his lover and bride. Can you say toxic masculinity? Oh my god, creepy stalker, hashtag me too. All joking aside, out of all the classic monster movies, The Mummy is my favorite. For a movie that was made in 1932, the makeup effects for this movie is just simply amazing, and honestly, it's probably better than some of the stuff we're getting these days, which is nothing but a bunch of CGI garbage. It's like the craft of filmmaking has been lost on the modern era, and Boris Karloff is just creepy as fuck. That man could do so much with so little. These are just stills, but look at his intensity. The dude is just amazing and creepy. And that's why this movie is at number 2. And finally, we've reached numero uno. My favorite and go-to horror film is 1982's The Thing. Now, I would like to point out the irony of the fact that I really don't like remakes, but yet my favorite horror movie is a remake. And it's a damn good one. Directed by John Carpenter, written by Bill Lancaster and John W. Campbell Jr. A research team in Antarctica is hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of its victims. For a movie that was created in 1982, the practical effects in this movie are just amazing and horrifying and disgusting. I watched this movie a lot on HBO growing up. And it wasn't until I was older when I truly developed an appreciation for this movie. It's not just the practical effects that are amazing, it's the suspense and the tension that is built throughout the film. If I haven't seen it for a while, I kind of forget certain things that happen in the movie, and it still catches me by surprise. A really good example of one of the scenes that pulls off the tension and suspense is the scene where Kurt Russell is testing the blood to try and figure out who the alien is. And it's also a really good example of using a jump scare that doesn't wear off over time. I always know it's coming, but it's just done so well, and you're so engrossed in that tension that it still catches you off guard. Now, I was 8 when The Thing came out. And I was at the mall one night with my mom and I believe a friend of mine, and attached to this mall was a theater, and they were displaying the poster for The Thing, and I was just mesmerized by it. I just thought it was just so cool and scary. And my imagination would run wild about what this movie called The Thing was about. It's definitely one of the best horror movies to come out of the 80s. So yeah, that's why The Thing is my number 1 pick. So finally, I'm able to go and turn things over to you. What are your thoughts on my top 15? And let me know what your favorite horror movies are. Thanks everyone, have a safe and happy Halloween. I'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. And if you didn't, well, thanks for watching anyway. If you want to see more of my crappy content and shitty opinions, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Bash that bell for notifications. I've even heard it works on occasion. And I want to give a huge shout out to all of you who go and support me on Subscribestar. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome.